a mother. I'm a certified firearm instructor and a pepper spray instructor. I'm the Director of Outreach for Women's Programs for Gun Owners Action League. I also serve as the Massachusetts State Leader for Armed Women of America and Women for Gun Rights. I'm here today to support H2618 and S1692, which would repeal Chapter 135 and enact the gun law of 2024. You see, as an instructor, we receive no guidance from the state on what we're allowed to teach. The new law changed the way we are able to give a certificate to our students. The law demands brand new curriculum that includes injury prevention, suicide prevention, disengagement tactics, live fire, and a written exam. But no one knows what that actually looks like, who can teach it, or how it will work. That's not safety. That's government creating confusion. As a pepper spray instructor and a licensed ammunition dealer, I used to be able to sell pepper spray and ammo to my students. Now that right has been stripped away from me. Now, if you're under 18, you can't legally possess pepper spray without a special permit. A permit the state hasn't even created yet. You see, my children, who's 16 and 17, both have a valid FID card. The old law stated that if they had a valid FID card, they could possess pepper spray. Now that's taken away from them. I asked my police chief what the law meant and if he had a permit, and he said no. That says everything. If law enforcement doesn't understand how can parents understand that? How can I feel comfortable that my kids can protect themselves without breaking the law? Good question. As a small woman, when I carry a firearm on my hip, it becomes an equalizer. A tool that gives me the fighting chance against someone bigger and stronger who wants to harm me. But when I'm in a gun-free zone like this, the people's house, I can't protect myself. Not with a firearm, not even with pepper spray. But I'm allowed to declare a knife. That's not public safety. That's government control. That's endangering the very people you claim to protect. After my last testimonial here, I sent a letter here asking why can't I carry pepper spray? I have not yet received a letter back. I will be quick to tell you one other thing. As an instructor, and I instruct a lot of women that have been in a domestic violence situation or a crime. And I'm going to tell you right now, this law, this chapter 135 does nothing to protect us. We are not the criminal. We are not the ones that are being let back out in the street. Poor Sean Gannon, the person that killed him was arrested over 100 times. And if you Google that right now, the people that are committing the crimes are people with illegal firearms. We are not the problem. We are the law-abiding citizens, and we're most vetted individuals in this community. We create seed for safer communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Arms in the aftermath of a shooting to understand where those guns are coming from. And when the gun industry is engaged in improper practices, we worry that leads to more guns flowing into our communities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your testimony here tonight. Next, I'd like to invite, first I want to recognize Senator John Vilas, who is joined the hearing. I also want to invite Elizabeth Ryan from Everytown for Gun Safety to testify on H2672.
Good afternoon, Chairs Cahill and Cronin and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Ryan. I am Policy Counsel at Everytown for Gun Safety. I'm a resident of the city of Boston, and I also spent several years serving as the Deputy General Counsel here at the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. I appreciate the chance to talk to you today in support of S 1653 and H 2672, an act relative to firearm industry accountability and gun violence victims' access to justice. In 2005, Congress passed the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, also known as PLACA. In the 20 years since then, this law has shielded unscrupulous actors in the gun industry from accountability for the harmful practices that directly threaten public safety. No other industry in the country has been granted such broad immunity, and in fact, other industries are routinely held accountable for the harm that they cause. But the gun industry has been able to skirt responsibility for decades. When gun dealers and manufacturers engage in irresponsible business practices that result in preventable harm or in criminal misuse of guns, PLACA has allowed them to avoid liability. But PLACA's liability shield, while broad, is not absolute. The law includes exceptions, including one that allows lawsuits to proceed in cases when the gun industry member knowingly violates a state law related to the sale or marketing of firearms. These exceptions exist precisely to enable those whose conduct violates the law to be held accountable. And Massachusetts has the chance to tell the firearms industry that it cannot and will not skirt liability for its own unsafe business practices. Only then will the industry and the Commonwealth finally have the incentive to establish the reasonable controls called for by this bill. And the requirements of the bill are just that, reasonable and even basic. It requires members of the firearms industry to do things like prevent the sale of firearms to prohibited people, institute barriers against loss and theft, and ensure that firearms are not promoted for illegal use. The bill would also allow the Attorney General's office and private citizens to sue bad actors in the gun industry when their acts or omissions lead to harm. The ability to sue is long overdue for victims of gun violence and their families. The gun industry should and must face the people it has harmed in court when its own bad acts are responsible for injury and death. Since 2021, 9 other states have passed laws similar to this. All of these laws have withstood legal challenges thus far. Most recently, the Second Circuit upheld New York's law, holding that it specifically created a pathway within the PLACA exception to hold industry members civilly liable for their own illegal and unreasonable conduct when that conduct contributes to the public health crisis of gun violence. And it is time for Massachusetts law to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Senator Durant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. Thank you for testifying today. I guess my question just kind of surrounds, well, I'm thinking about what other industries we hold responsible for their manufacturing of a product that then causes harm. I mean, we certainly don't with vaccines, but that's a whole different argument for another day. But the question I have is, what are the examples? So I'm trying to put myself in the place of a manufacturer, right? I manufacture a firearm, and then in order to sell it, I have to sell it to a licensed. There's a legal avenue for selling this. So what kind of acts are we trying to prevent, and why is that manufacturer liable if he uses the proper channels?
So an example of something that a firearms manufacturer would be held responsible for was ensuring that they were not knowingly selling to a dealer potentially known to be supplying the illegal market of firearms, or selling to a dealer who had particularly high rates of suspicious loss and thefts, and ensuring that the firearms that are going from them as a manufacturer into the stream of commerce we're not going to be doing so illegally.
So and I guess it's kind of that downstream part that I have a bit of a problem with. So if I'm a manufacturer, I decide I'm going to sell to a new gun shop that opens up, and I apologize because I don't understand if they sell through distributors and then the distributors sell. It's that downstream process so you would expect, or you would look to, this bill would look to make them have all of those records and then vet the people that they're selling to?
So they would have to do their due diligence in terms of who they were going to sell to. This bill requires that they set up what is called reasonable controls and procedures. Those are not, there are several things that specify what the outcome should be in terms of sort of not selling to prohibited people, not selling to somebody who they have reasonable believed to know is a harm to themselves or to others. From the manufacturer's point of view, they would have to set up procedures and processes so that they would be able to investigate or know or have barriers in place so that their products as manufacturers are not going to dealers, generally FFLs, federally licensed firearms dealers, who either don't have their own reasonable procedures in place or who are known to supply the illegal market, for example.
But can't they reasonably assume that they're selling to someone who's licensed? I assume if you're a purchaser now, on the purchasing end of the firearms you have to get that license. You have to go through different steps to get there.
So this is basically saying you have to do your due diligence. You can't just assume. Mm-hmm. You have to set up some sort of procedure to ensure that what you're doing is lawful and doesn't risk putting those firearms into the illegal market.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one final question. Of the states that have done this, has anyone sued the manufacturer? Has this become a problem where now I'm suing the manufacturer and I've been successful at it?
So as far as I know, the first one of these was passed in 2021, so we are just now seeing cases go through the court. Most of the actions from other states have been against dealers, rather than manufacturers, but manufacturers are included in the responsibility in the statute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Representative Linsky, then Rep. X.
Again, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. And trying to get at some of the questions my good friend, the senator from Worcester County, was getting at. So he asked a question about what other industries are like this, and it's my understanding that virtually every other industry in the country, you have a right to sue in this type of situation, except for guns. So, for example, if General Motors makes a defective car, you can sue General Motors. If the manufacturer of a drug makes a defective drug, you can sue the drug manufacturer. But then if one of those industries use a deceptive advertising method, for example, if they were advertising an unsafe product to children or to someone who should not use that product, you could sue. What this bill attempts to do while working within the constraints of a federal law is allowing a lawsuit to proceed, and merely to proceed in that type of situation against a gun manufacturer or a gun dealer who uses a deceptive advertising method or sells an unsafe product, in the bounds of that. That's all that this bill tries to do.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I know we don't want to litigate this, and I'll be very brief if I may. I think, though, the only difference is that what we're saying is a defective product. That's where we're suing. You have a defective product. If a manufacturer of an automobile has a car, say a Pinto, that gets smashed in the back and explodes, well, that's a defective product. Here, though, what we're saying is that the gun is not defective, but we're punishing the manufacturers for the way someone uses their product.
No, that's not what this bill does, with all due respect, Senator. It really isn't.
Rep. X.
Thank you again, Chair, and thank you for your patience. I used to own a Pinto, so I'm glad that I made it through. Holy smokes. Me too. I appreciate your testimony. 3 quick questions. Sure. One, are you representing EOPS today?
No, I'm representing Everytown for Gun Safety. I just wanted to point out that I am a previous employee of EOPS here.
Okay, you're not an employee there now.
Not currently,
okay,
no.
Thank you. Number 2, can you give us the other states? That's important for me to know.
Sure.
Either now or in the future.
I can give them to you right now.
Yes, please.
So the states are California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, Maryland, and Washington.
Washington State.
Washington State, okay. Yes.
All right, thank you. And the last one, are there any cases of what you're talking about happening in Massachusetts. Can you tell us of any?
We don't know because right now there isn't any law that requires them to set up any reasonable controls or procedures, and the Attorney General doesn't have a cause of action right now. So if these are happening, they have not been able to be brought to court for them.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
testimony today. I'd like to invite in person Matthew Nugent. Is Mr. Nugent here? Okay, great. And as he comes to testify, I also want to recognize Senator Bill Driscoll, who is joining the committee today. David Pacino from Giffords to testify virtually. David, are you with us?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. My name is David Pacino, and I'm the Legal Director and Deputy Chief Counsel of Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, which is the gun violence prevention organization founded and led by former Congresswoman and gun violence survivor Gabby Giffords. And I'm pleased to be testifying in support of H. 2672 and S. 1653. This legislation is designed to address the criminal market in guns by setting standards for conduct of all those who sell guns in Massachusetts. All responsible gun companies know that they have a duty to prevent unlawful sales and a duty to take steps to prevent their guns from being diverted and causing harm to our communities. And most gun companies in Massachusetts and around the country are responsible. They do those things that they should do. They take the steps that they should take to prevent harm from falling to our communities. But a small number of them don't. And it is that small number that disproportionately supply the criminal market in guns, and that criminal market in turn drives the gun violence that we see, the homicides we see, the shootings that we see, both in this state and across the country. Those small number of companies are able to get away with it because it's too hard to sue them. It's too hard to sue the gun industry. That's for a number of factors. Some of them are related to laws on the books, but primarily they're related to structural issues. They're related to information asymmetries. And the result is a perverse incentive because those least responsible companies, those ones that engage in misconduct, are able to get away with that improper conduct, that improper activity, and it's a financial advantage to them because they can avoid the costs that any responsible company would gladly incur, and because they make sales that no responsible company would ever make. This legislation is designed to address that problem by removing those barriers and removing those perverse incentives, to align the interests of those that are engaged in the gun industry with the responsibilities that most gun companies have already internalized and already practiced. For these reasons, I urge a favorable report on this legislation.
Thank you very much. Questions? Representative.
Thank you, Chair. Sir, where are you based out of?
I'm based out of New York City, although my organization operates nationally.
So you're in New York City now?
I am, yes.
Okay, can you name any Massachusetts cases of what you're talking about?
I think there's one case that comes to mind for me where I think there should have been a civil lawsuit and there wasn't, and that's the Littleton Mill, where assault weapons were being sold by an aggregate of different dealers co-located in one space. Clear violations of Massachusetts law happening there, clear violations of federal law happening there. But because of the way that operation was structured, it was too difficult to bring a civil case against them. And so those civil cases never moved forward. And I think if this legislation had been on the books at that time, that would have happened.
Thank you. What was the name of the company?
There were a combination of companies that were operating out of a mill in Littleton. I can send you some information, Mr. Representative, about that case.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Chair.
Senator.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to follow up on that because I have a couple of questions that brought a couple of questions up to me. Were those those people who were selling, were they legal dealers in every other respect?
The way that the operation was structured, to my understanding, is that there were folks who were selling different components of firearms. If you went around to each of the different dealers co-located in this location and purchased their components, and then you went home and put them together, you would have potentially an assault weapon that would be illegal under Massachusetts law. But because those components were being sold in separate parts, no single dealer was itself selling the assault weapon. And that created barriers to being able to bring civil enforcement actions or civil lawsuits against those companies engaged in those practices.
All right, so now I'm just a little bit more confused. Sorry. So each of them were selling just pieces of it, and then you take it and you assemble it? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay, but none of them on their own did anything illegal individually.
Well, the reason why this operation was set up, why there were all these folks co-located and separate folks would be selling different components, was to provide access to these weapons that would be illegal under Massachusetts law. That co-location of folks selling different pieces was an avenue for people to acquire firearms that would be illegal in the state of Massachusetts. I think that you absolutely could make a case against each of those individual dealers because they were knowingly supplying these products, knowing who was selling right next door to them, right down the hall. But there were challenges in bringing that case because the structure of law in Massachusetts at the time, we didn't have this industry accountability statute in place. We didn't have this ability to say that if you're selling these gun products, you need to take affirmative steps to prevent unlawful sales, unlawful uses of firearms. And I think if this legislation had been in place, there would have been an avenue to pursue that against those companies.
Okay, this legislation would step back even one step further so that the manufacturer who sold those parts to a legal dealer would also be held responsible. No?
It would depend on if the manufacturer had engaged in any misconduct. So if the manufacturer was knowingly supplying firearm parts, knowing that they were going to be sold for illegal uses in Massachusetts, then yes. If they were not involved in that, then no, I don't think they would have potential exposure.
So just for doing their normal business, which is I'm going to sell you this receiver because you're licensed to have a receiver, and I'm a manufacturer. That would not be illegal.
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
My perspective on, in my view, as a practitioner in this space, about the distinctions are between those who, with the federal statute, FLACA, that stands for the proposition that the mere sale of firearms does not give you liability. You are not going to be hauled into court simply because you are engaged in the firearm industry. It's only if you engage in conduct that violates our laws that you are going to be held accountable. So what that means is that the mere manufacture of firearms, some percentage of which end up as crime guns, that's not something that our Congress wants these gun companies to be hauled into court for. However, that legislation had important exceptions that allow for every state to set the terms under which guns are sold within their borders. And this legislation is keyed into that. It is an expression of Massachusetts' inherent police powers. It's consistent with that federal statute. And what it says is if you're going to sell guns in Massachusetts, there are certain standards you have to meet.
So again, I'm kind of getting to the point where each one of these individuals was legal in selling the product that they sold. What became illegal, again, if I just sold the receiver, I'm free and clear. I've done nothing illegal there. What became illegal was when the purchaser of those assembled something that became illegal in Massachusetts. Is that correct? I'm in the right space here?
Yeah, I think that's right. And if you'll forgive me an analogy that might seem a little silly, but if I set up an operation where I would sell a chemical that is a precursor to methamphetamine, and I set it up in a co-located space with 5 other folks who would sell the other chemicals, and all of our customers came in, stopped at each of our shops and bought the methamphetamine precursors, and then went home and made methamphetamine, I would want there to be action against everyone involved in that operation because we knew exactly what we were doing. And I think it's a similar thing here.
Okay. Well, I do think it would be incumbent upon the law to try to make those connections. But I do think we have to be very careful about trying to tie together the goals of somebody who is selling a legal product. I think I get where you're going. I find that an interesting direction that you're going. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Representative.
Sure, I just want to point out in the scenario that we were just talking about from my good friend, the senator from Worcester, that what's effectively going on in that scenario is those different dealers within the mill in Littleton are selling a ghost gun. And that prior to the enactment of Chapter 135, and that we had the repeal bills on earlier this morning, it was all right to sell a ghost gun effectively. So This again goes to the importance of Section 135, because for the first time, that outlawed the selling of the ghost guns.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions, want to thank you for your testimony here today and invite another virtual testifier, Ramia Swami from Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, to testify.
Hi everyone, can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right, good morning, Chairs Khan and Cahill and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Ramya Swami and I'm Policy Counsel at the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of H2672. Negligence is a fundamental civil justice principle. It requires us all to use reasonable care to prevent foreseeable harm and holds us accountable when we don't. That is why companies that sell dangerous cars, rush unsafe planes into service, or induce doctors to prescribe deadly drugs all face consequences.